The middle class is still there. The middle class, and even more people at the bottom, are not sharing in the gains of economic growth to the degree they did in earlier decades, particularly the decades after World War II. And as a result, many of them are feeling squeezed. That's different than shrinking, but it's still a problem. Our goal for our immediate goal, how do we get out of this deep economic downturn? But the related goal, as we get back to having an economy that grows, we need to have shared prosperity, more broadly shared prosperity. So people at the bottom don't lose ground, people in the middle aren't as squeezed. And that would mean that we need the gains from income growth more broadly shared across the whole population, which they were for 30 years after World War II, and less concentrated at the top. That's hard to do. It has a lot to do with broader issues of national and international economics, but we do need governments, particularly the federal, to pursue policies that at least mitigate the degree to which the income growth gets concentrated among a smaller slice of people at the top. People often look at the policymakers in Washington and say, what's wrong with them? Why can't they just act? We know we have a longer-term deficit problem. Now, for starters, in the very short term, right now, we're in a bad economic downturn. We have nearly 10% unemployment. We actually need to do more in state fiscal relief and unemployment insurance, and it can be deficit financed in the short run as long as it's strictly temporary. But the question is, why is it that policymakers can't start moving now to enact things that would go into effect, not today, but after the economy recovers, to deal with the longer-term fiscal problems? Well, it isn't a problem of just the policymakers. The policymakers are often reflecting what their constituents, what the public thinks. So the public often, I think, doesn't understand that there are no easy choices. Where I fault policymakers often is they often don't level with the public that there are these hard choices. In the long run, there are some easy things to do, but they're small. The long-term problem is big. In the long run, there are very tough choices. We're going to have to close the Social Security financing gap, slow healthcare cost growth, deal with inefficiencies, and raise a significant amount of new revenue. All hard, politically. The sooner the public begins to understand that that's the case, the more room there will be for policymakers to have the guts to take those actions. It's very much my view that we should approach this very carefully, and that we should have a principle at federal and state levels both, that in dealing with fiscal problems, we do not further disadvantage people at the bottom, that we do not increase poverty or make the poor poorer, and that if possible, we actually couple actions to reduce projected longer-term deficits with actions to increase opportunity and reduce poverty at the bottom. Now, someone listening to that may say, how could you do that? Or that's naive, it won't happen. But it has happened. In both 1990 and 1993, the Congresses and presidents of that time, one was a Republican president, one was a Democratic president, passed big deficit reduction packages. In each case, they reduced the deficit $500 billion over 5 years. And in both cases, they included measures like big expansions of the earned income tax credit for low-income working families in the deficit reduction package, and reduced the deficit in ways that not only shielded people at the bottom, but actually lifted working poor parents and children out of poverty and made some of those who were poor less poor. It can be done. It takes political will to do it, but it can be done, and in my view, that's the course we ought to be taking.